Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also thank the honourable member for the question. But before I respond to this question, I need to correct certain irresponsible comments made by some members of the opposition in this August House on informal settlement upgrade. Mr. Speaker, sir, yesterday, Honourable Linda Tumbuya said, and I quote, "The explosion of the informal squatter settlements in our cities and towns around the country, it has exploded under this government. And yet, this is not being a priority for government to provide affordable housing for our people, and it's so many times before 15 years, 16 years, unquote." Mr. Speaker, sir, let me inform the honourable member, and indeed the opposition, that the explosion of informal settlements in our cities and towns did not happen under this government. History will tell us that expiry of leases was a significant contributor to the growth of informal settlements in Fiji. I still remember thousands of our people were made homeless with the non-renewal of sugarcane leases. Thousands of families from Vanuatu and from Western Division moved out when the leases expired. Majority settled in Suvarnasori corridor, mainly in the Nasinu area. Mr. Speaker, sir, informal settlements had increased by 73% by 2003 when farmers were made homeless. That was under the leadership of several members sitting on the other side of the House. Now they are donning sheep's clothing, playing the part of savior, and painting the picture as if this government has done nothing in the housing sector. But they know it was the past government's poor policy decisions that resulted in the influx of people moving into informal settlements in the urban and peri-urban area. Mr. Speaker, sir, just one bad decision led to a massive housing demand we see today, a demand this government is now addressing. We're just not cleaning up the mess, but at the same time introducing new programs, new initiatives, new grant schemes in housing sector for our people. It is highly irresponsible behavior on the part of the opposition to ignore these facts. Mr. Speaker, sir, how can any government upgrade informal settlements on freehold and TLTB land? Currently, there are 26 informal settlements on private land and 123 settlements on Itoke land. Government can only upgrade any settlement after obtaining a development lease. If the private owners, freehold land owners, do not wish to give or sell the land, there is no way the government can step in and start upgrading that facility. But we do recognize there is land scarcity, and to address housing issue based on land scarcity, the ministry is working with IFC to develop the strata units. And also, Mr. Speaker, so it must be recognized that people come from different socio-economic groups. Their needs are different. They have different financial background. Some prefer to rent. Some prefer subsidy to rent. Some have collected some money, but they don't have enough as a deposit to buy their first home. So all these programs are there to assist people to own a home. Honorable Tumbuya also said it takes 15, 16. She had previously said, what is the point when the upgrade of informal settlement takes so long? There are reasons why it takes time, Mr. Speaker, sir. The upgrade of informal settlements are not taking place on a green field where there is no human settlement. Such development can be faster. Our informal settlement upgrade program, as the name suggests, is an in-situ program where people are already living. Planning and documentation takes time. There's a lot of disagreement within the community. The upgrade includes all aspects of subdivision, such as roads, drains, sewage, electricity, and water supply. We have to consult with the settlers at every stage. Mr. Speaker, sir, in such situations, Contractors have to carry out work with minimum disturbance to the settlers. There are heavy machinery moving into the settlement that can cause serious injuries or fatalities if not handled with extreme care. Mr. Speaker, sir, residents also pick up arguments and dispute arises with the contractor on their arbitrary land boundaries. And sometimes we have landowner disputes as well. There are a number of development that we are doing at the moment, and we are facing some of these problems, Mr. Speaker, sir. These issues cause delays to the upgrade program, which is time-consuming as well as costly. My ministry had to cancel a contract for an upgrade program in Dombati, and the reason was the contractor went in and he was working on the land for 3 years, but there is a scheme plan that the contractor has to follow. While the work was continuing, the dispute arose in the community, and some individuals living in that community in the informal settlement, they started extending their houses. Some built new houses just for their sons, daughters, for their aunties, uncle. And all these houses were actually on the path where the road will be constructed. So it came to a deadlock. I mean, the contractor cannot proceed. So the contractor was facing so much problem. He was chased out of the settlement. We had to intervene, but ultimately we could not solve that problem. So the contractor decided that he will not continue. So we had to cancel that particular contract, Mr. Speaker, sir. So planning and execution is extremely difficult in an in-situ development sites, and particularly when residents do not cooperate. Mr. Speaker, sir, despite this problem, it is this government under the able leadership of our Prime Minister that started upgrading settlements on Itoke land. In reality, when the government acquires a development lease, the land premium and yearly ground rent is paid to TLTB by the ministry in full. We have paid over 3 million in lease premiums for these leases, and we continue to pay yearly rentals to TLTB. Both the landowners and settlers living in these settlements directly benefit from the lease arrangements. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Lenora Geringerin Tambua had raised her concern about the oldest Tomuka settlement, and she questioned why it is still not developed. I hope she remembers that. Mr. Speaker, sir, if it's the oldest settlement, then it should have been developed by the past governments. She would have got her response from long-serving parliamentarians sitting on the other side. Mr. Speaker, sir, the past governments carried out basic upgrade of informal settlement only on state land and not on the land owned by the Itoke landowners. Tomuka is owned by the landowners. My ministry paid the development lease for Tomuka. Our interest is to develop that area, but development could not proceed because of a dispute, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji First government is the first government in Fiji that made huge capital commitments and investments to improve the livelihood of informal settlements. Mr. Speaker, sir, a number of informal settlements now have roads for their vehicles. You just have to go to Siberia, Vunika. They have footpaths, water, electricity, and even street lights to make the quality of life better while waiting for the settlements to be upgraded. This is a bold step taken by Fiji First government, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Linda Tumbuya is blaming the government for certain families living in Tuirara Farm Road, Padamlala, Salato Road, for not having access to water and electricity. Okay? Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important for the opposition to understand and note that it is the owners of Itoke and freehold land who can give consent for informal settlers occupying their land for these utilities, not the government. We don't own that land. Unfortunately, the ministry, we don't have a development lease over those areas mentioned by Honorable Tumbuya. Turara Farm Road comes under TLTB, and informal settlement in Padamlala, Salato Road have Waka Vanua arrangement with landowners. So landowners have to give consent. Mr. Speaker, sir, the opposition members should not assume that the government can upgrade or give consent for utilities in all informal settlements in Fiji. And I want the opposition to understand that they have to get rid of this perception that when you go out, you see an informal settlement, you immediately think that, oh, the government is not developing that land. You need to understand who owns the land. If it is a private land, there is no way government can develop that. Let me clarify once more that for Itoke land, government can acquire development leases only when 60% of landowners give their consent. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the last financial year, we have completed capital works for 3 projects. Dubu project and Lendu Sasa project, these 2 projects were on hold since 2017. This was not because we didn't have the funds. The problem was landowner disputes, and there were disagreements with developers. So we managed to iron it out, and the project is now completed, Mr. Speaker, sir. 451 households eligible for land lots in these settlements will receive their leases this year after the final survey. Mr. Speaker, sir, the ministry has been working simultaneously on the preparatory work for 10 other settlements. By the end of last financial year, 6 settlements have reached the tender document stage after completing initial topographic surveys, scheme plans, environment impact assessment, consultations, geotech surveys, and engineering plans. These settlements are Sakoda, Wakanisila, Tore Tavela, Dombati, Field 4. Mr. Speaker, sir, Sakoda and Wakanisila are earmarked for commencement of civil works in this financial year. The other 4 settlements, that is Lovu Seaside, Nambare, Tau, Venga Venga, and Vunika, are in the preparatory phase. We have completed scheme plans, and it is in this financial year we intend to complete the engineering plans. Mr. Speaker, sir, to keep proper records, my ministry now has a database of all informal settlements in Fiji. The next step is to collect household data. This year, the ministry will carry out socio-economic survey for 20 settlements under ministry's development leases. This will be followed by similar data collection for all other settlements in Fiji, so that we have a complete database on all informal settlements around Fiji. Mr. Speaker, sir, all in all, work is progressing well in 13 informal settlements, and yet Honorable Tumbuya was commenting yesterday that this government has not done enough for informal settlers, just for political gain. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you.
Very.
We'll move on.